Welcome back, Guardians. It is I, Jurio11, Lorekeeper. My bad there. I was about to mess up. And this is my co-host, Salem.
Salem the Archivist. Greetings, Guardians and alien species alike.
Welcome back to the Destiny Lore Emissary Logs, where we discuss the lore and the history and the culture and the science of our universe. And today we will be discussing quite a scary thing. So gather around the campfire, grab your marshmallows, and get ready to hear about the horror that is.
I've always wanted to taste a marshmallow.
I'll have to show you them sometime. But anyways, today's episode is going to be Destiny's Freddy Krueger, aka Nezarec. Now I say Freddy Krueger because I personally have been able to sit down and watch a movie with a cryptarch called Nightmare on Elm Street, and this character in the movie Freddy Krueger reminds me a lot of Nezarec. Nezarec is quite the villain, as it were, and we are going to discuss him in this episode. So let us jump right into the topic. So, fundamentally, who is Nezarec? Nezarec,
A being of nightmares.
correct. That is very correct. So he is a disciple of the Witness, given the title of the final god of pain, which is certainly very emo and edgy, but I guess it works. His species designation is actually unknown. For a long time, a lot of people insinuated that maybe he was a member of the Krueger, but
I thought he was like one of these ancient beings from one of your guys' books called the Chimera.
Yeah, so a lot of people like to view him as a chimera. Chimeras are, in lore, they're just amalgamation creatures, where you could take body parts from a bunch of different creatures and stick them together. Now,
Is that why he looked so different when was connected with the Shadow Legion that was around him?
So,
from what I've seen, he looked way different than how the young wolf saw them.
So his time, so when it comes to Nezarec, and specifically, a lot of people like to refer to him as a chimera because of the eyes that he has. They're all different eyes from different species. So a lot of people like to consider him a chimera, which I would not be surprised to call him the same thing. He technically is a chimera, but his species designation is unknown. What is known is that he is very old, and I mean very old. And his main power is his psionic ability, his psychic abilities, to bring just straight up nightmare and terror and fear across any world that he comes across.
They say as long as fear exists, he does.
Nezarec exists, correct. And we will get to that way at the end of the log, but we'll come back to that. Anyways, so let's go over his first, I guess, his introduction. Very long time ago, Nezarec existed. We don't know how he was born. We don't know what species he was. We don't even know if he is the last member of his species. All we know is that he's been around for a very long time. The Witness recognized the power in wielding a weapon like Nezarec to fulfill its purpose of enacting the final shape, and thus elevated him to the status of disciple. Now, at this time, Nezarec was not the only disciple. Rolk existed, the Lubraean, and as part of the exaltation, the elevation of this being to the status of disciple, he gifted him a glaive. Now, this glaive is not the scythe that we see him wield, or that was seen being wielded, I should say, during the young wolf's assassination mission, we'll say. But it would later be discovered on, well, the moon. And we'll get to why it was discovered on our moon, our Luna. Now, it is to note, before we continue, that all tormentors of the dread, all tormentors are copies of Nezarec. All of them. Without a doubt. Just as the subjugators are copies of the Lubrayans, Rolk, just as the husks are weird transformed copies of the Elixni, just as
I guess that explains their red bodies and black heads, but I honestly thought, from first point of view, without learning anything really about them, I thought Rolk and Nezarec were kind of like the same species in a way, just from looks alone.
Correct.
Because they both have red bodies and they both have the dark heads.
Correct. And it is to be noted that Rolk species, Lubrayans, have 6 eyes, whereas, if I'm not correct, Nezarec has way more than 6 eyes. I think he has
8?
8 or 9. He's got a lot of eyes. But yes, they are not the same species. My guess is that perhaps the color scheme could be maybe they purposely gave him that. The witness allowed him to be that color scheme to kind of insinuate the whole, oh, you're a disciple, my warrior kind of thing. But regardless, not the same species.
Interesting.
I don't know, personally, if Nezarec is older than the Lubrayans, or even older than the precursors who make up the witness. But what I do know is that Nezarec is very old. So old.
I would have assumed, due to, I guess, the saying of, if there's still fear in the universe, Nezarec exists, I thought he was just made to be the physical being of fear. So I thought Nezarec would have been older than the witness.
Right. And while my assumption is that he may be as old as the witness, or the precursors, I should say, that made the witness, but I do not believe he is like one of the first beings in the universe. I don't think he predates them. Regardless of the matter of the origins and the timeline of Nezarec, after being elevated to disciple, he would, well, rain terror on the universe. One of the first species to encounter him, and this is going to be very interesting to our dear Salem here, one of the first species to ever encounter him was actually the Scions. Now, in particular, the pre-Cabal Scions. This was the Scions.
So this was way before we entered the Scion system and basically enslaved them.
They were already enslaved to a whole nother god. His psionic abilities, his psychic abilities, would affect the Scions in such a way that was so devastating and so total that Scions would view him as a god. And
if
in
something
return,
that impactful and generally terrifying ever, I guess, enslaved the Cabal, I wouldn't really highly doubt we would see him as such, if the only thing you do to make us submit is to bring us tremendous fear.
Correct. And it's in return for their worship, he showed them the power of the veil. Now, for those, the veil is a topic that a lot of Guardians and a lot of people in our universe to this day don't quite understand. What I can tell you, for the simplicity's sake here, is that it is a primordial localization of darkness, similar to the Traveler. Not exactly the same, but similar. And it does this unique thing, similar to Egregore, where it taps into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's a bit metaphysical to explain, and I'm sure the Veil will get its own episode in the future, but for now we're just going to leave it at primordial darkness entity. And Nezarec would force the Veil and its power upon the Scions to enact its will. And by will, I mean Nezarec's will. And Nezarec's will is very different than beings like Rolk or even the Witness. The Witness, at the end of the day, wanted to enact the final shape. Rolk viewed the final shape as an extreme version of survival of the fittest. Very similar to sword logic. Nezarec, his goal at the end of the day was to spread as much fear and chaos as he could. He was a chaos junkie at the bottom of it, and he used fear to do so. Now, this patronage of Nezarec by the Scions would, while it started pre-Cabal, it would continue on post-Cabal integration. And Scions in the modern day, there are still Scion pockets to this day that worship Nezarec. And we will go over one of the stories of one of these Scions, Acacia, but I'm going to hold off on that story just for a little bit to explain the timeline for Nezarec before we get to Acacia in the modern times, because there are two individuals in particular. I mean, we could mention Michael as well, who is the de facto leader of what I'm going to explain next, but we'll get there. I'm jumping all over the place. The next thing we're going to do... Well, actually, before we continue on, what is your opinion on that, Salem?
My opinion on the Scions worshipping Nezarec or on Nezarec himself?
The Psionic... The Scions worshipping Nezarec.
Well, I can't really blame them for worshipping him. I personally do not worship a god of fear. I'm, guess, a fan of the Traveler. I don't know exactly if I would call it worshipping it, for I wasn't raised to worship a being. So I can't really exactly relate to when it... I guess the right word is to say, I guess I can't relate to them worshipping out of fear of this being, and I guess getting these psionic abilities from him, because obviously I can't telepathically link to something.
So, just to be clear, Nezarec doesn't give the Scions their psionic abilities. How do I explain this? The Scions are already psionic. They already have psychic abilities. Nezarec's psychic abilities are so much more powerful that it's like the pressure of a human foot upon an ant in comparison. So his power exceeds theirs so deeply that he could easily just invade them and invade their minds. His power over them is so complete and absolute that even psionic abilities like theirs are nothing in comparison to Nezarec's ability to subjugate and dominate his fear upon others. So
I see.
It's very much like it's a situation where they're going up against a fellow psychic being that is so powerful.
For my ignorance from what it sounded like. It did sound
No, and it's
from the wording standpoint.
It's okay. Think of it like this: Nezarec's psychic abilities. We're dealing with, when you're dealing with the Scions working psychic abilities, it's like Nezarec going behind them and putting their arm behind their back easily without even breaking a sweat. He is
Oh, okay.
he has his grip around the scions arguably worse than other species because of the psychic ability that he has and the psychic ability that the scions have. Now, the scions were clearly not the only individuals who were affected by Nezarec. Other species also became affected. The next one in the timeline, from what it appears, is our own humanity. Specifically, pre-Golden Age humanity, before even the Traveler came to our system. His influence affected humans way so far older that it's hard to even process their existence. Now, from what we know, that there was cults. There was a cult that worshipped him, and they wrote a apocrypha in his name called Apocrypha, like a book.
Oh.
A tome, as it were. This book was called Of Hated Nezarec. Now, I could read off the pages of Hated Nezarec, but we're gonna skip that. Don't want to give him more power. So, the next thing we will discuss is specifically his involvement with the collapse. Because, fun fact, he was one of the main perpetrators of the collapse.
Really?
Correct.
I thought the collapse happened because of some type of weird natural disaster.
So, the collapse was So, a lot of people who were there remember it as such, but the collapse, from everything that I have gleaned, from every account and source that I can possibly glean, whether it be first-hand, second-hand, third-hand, primary, secondary, tertiary, it appears that when it happened, a lot of people in the system, a lot of humanity viewed it as a bunch of natural disasters all happening at once, with an unknown force leading these natural disasters. But in actuality, the Witness and its forces came to the Sol system. The Black Fleet arrived, and the two beings in charge of the invasion against humanity was Nezarec and his pyramid ship, the command ship of the fleet, and Savathun, the Witch Queen. Of course, it has to be Savathun, who, by the way, has her own sort of history of showing up on Earth even before the collapse happened. But that's a tale for another day.
She truly cannot get her grubby little hands off of literally anything.
Correct. It's always the next scheme. Now,
I really want her dead.
When Nezarec arrived on Earth with his fleet, he engulfed the planet so much with darkness. Pure darkness. Pure, unadulterated darkness. Likely enhanced by the veil, which was on his pyramid ship. That day turned to midnight. It was dark. It was horrifying. It felt, and it was, to many, the end of the world. But just as victory was so close to Nezarec's hands, and that the Witness was finally going to destroy the Traveler, Savathun stepped in. Savathun, for those who don't know, is a being of trickery, and of schemes, and plots, and most importantly, backup plans. It is surmised that it was around this time that Savathun realized that perhaps she needed a backup plan in case, oh, I don't know, the Traveler were to succeed at some point in the near future. So she decided to save the Traveler and save the Soul System by betraying Nezarec. She killed him. There are even some reports that she killed him using strand abilities, but this is not confirmed. So that is purely conjecture.
Now, what does she get out of this?
Well, it is surmised that her saving the Traveler, instigated the Traveler into seeing her as a potential protector, and thus, when she later died, many years later, she would be gifted the light. Her backup plan was to, if she knew that the Traveler could survive the darkness, maybe she was playing for the wrong team, and she needed a backup plan in case the darkness were to lose. It was a giant game of chess against the darkness and the witness, and she set up her chess pieces in such a way that many, many, many moves later, she was able to take the queen. Metaphorically speaking. She was able to take a advantageous position as time passed. But yes, she saved the Traveler in this instant, and very likely this action allowed her and her ilk to become blessed by the Traveler. Now, back to what happened. She mortally wounds Nezarec. Nezarec, with the power of the Veil on his ship, is able to draw upon the power of darkness to preserve his consciousness after death. This is the first time he's able to do this, and this is when the real horror of Nezarec really starts. But once again, we'll get back to that at the end of the log. But the Witch Queen, using her magic, her hive magic, cursed his body so that despite the fact that his consciousness, his psyche remained, it unfortunately was tied to his physical form. So his body slumped to the ground on board the pyramid, his pyramid, and died. Savathun then decided to steal the veil, hide it away on Neptune for safekeeping, and as time passed, the pyramid that he possessed fell and crashed into the surface of the moon, where it would later be engulfed.
Engulfed?
By the moon.
How does the moon engulf it?
Well, I don't know. Could be some residual effect after Crota's invasion of the moon, considering that his sword slashes cracked the surface. It's unclear. Regardless, his ship ends up buried under the moon. This pyramid, many Guardians, including the Young Wolf, are very familiar with, is the pyramid ship that belonged to Nezarec. Each pyramid ship, not every pyramid ship, how do I explain this? Every disciple gets a pyramid ship, but not every pyramid ship has a disciple tied to it. The one that Rolk had was stuck in Savathun's throne world. The one that Callus had was the Typhon
doing on
Imperator.
Savathun's throne world with his ship.
We'll get to that. We will get to that when we get to Rolk. Regardless, everybody, it's even speculated that the Young Wolves had their own pyramid ship, as it were, that being the one on Europa. Regardless, that's the one found on the moon. That's Nezarec's ship. Now,
I thought the one on Europa was Aramis.
And see, that's what a lot of people believed. That being said, during the resurrection of the Witch Queen, we were able to enter into that pyramid ship pretty easily.
I see.
Almost as if we were being called to that pyramid ship. So, regardless,
Aramis wouldn't be classified as a disciple, would she?
Maybe a proto-disciple, similar in status to beings like Zebo Wrath and Oryx and Savathun. Not true disciples, but near disciples. Regardless. Nezarec's body remained on the pyramid ship in the moon for a long time. That is until the Fallen arrived. The House of Wolves, led by Enoch. I think I'm saying that correctly. He was the Kel at the time. They discovered the
I think
pyramid
it was
ship.
Enox.
Inox.
Oh.
Inaaks. Inox.
Sometimes an I can be pronounced as an E.
She is a female Kel of the House of Wolves. She led a boarding party and found the corpses, and made the body parts of the corpse into talisman. And they distributed these talisman to the old crews, pirate groups. One of them was led by a very young Fallen, the son of Inox, known as Nezarec.
Ah, yes. Nezarec.
So
a man who will be influenced by Nezarec soon enough.
His fate is inexorably tied with Nezarec as it is. During this time, these relics, these talisman, would be distributed amongst all these different amongst the Fallen, and would be even spread around the system. One of them eventually found its hands into Caraxus, a fallen pirate who would later become one of the members of the Acolytes, of the revived, as it were, Acolytes of Nezarec. The first iteration was during the pre-Golden Age, and it was pretty much just humans. The second iteration was modern day. Caraxus would eventually join this group of Acolytes. Other ones would end up in the Tombs of Nezarec, located in Jovian space. So this is like way far out there in the Sol system and even beyond. So during the Dark Age, we're gonna go over. Well, you know what? This is a good time to discuss. We're gonna stop here, and this is gonna be a good time to discuss the current members of the Acolytes of Nezarec and go over their stories. Specifically, the story of Acacia and Briar, a Scion and a Guardian. Fitting, am I right? Anyways, the leader of the Acolytes in modern day is a human, a mortal human by the name of Michael. Seems a bit, seems a little simple, but regardless. On the night of his 18th birthday, Michael experienced his first nightmare, and we'll get to his ability with nightmares after we discuss the Acolytes, but before the next major thing of the timeline, because his Nezarec is tied with nightmares. His fate and his ability to control nightmares is something else. Regardless, Michael experiences Nezarec via nightmare. For the initiation ritual, they torture an Elixni, and he becomes leader. The other members include Caraxus, the Elixni we discussed earlier, Nessa, another human, likely another human by the name of Rufus, but his name is not discussed very much. And the last two members we will discuss is Acacia and Briar. The first story we will go over is Acacia. Now, I will be directly reading some transcripts of these individuals found upon the pieces of armor discovered by the young wolf and their compatriots aboard one of the pyramid ships left behind when the witness went inside the traveler's pale heart. So, this is the first entry, Acacia 1. The jungle density was oppressive and threatened to keep inexperienced explorers from traveling it. Though I had never navigated such a biome, I did not let it deter me. The humidity, the bugs, the overgrowth, I endured them all. I knew she was here. Her trail was almost impossible to find, let alone follow, but she was close. A few days passed before I stumbled upon a cave, hidden by wild and unwieldy bushes. Even in the cover of night, I could see her there, collecting berries. I snapped a twig under my foot. She spun, palm alight with purple aura, her singular eye trained on me. I raised my hands immediately. I mean no harm. I'm just a traveler looking for a place to lay my head for the night. I'm unarmed. I waited patiently, careful not to move an inch as she searched my body for anything that could cause her harm. When she found nothing but a tome in my bag, she considered me with a cautious pause, one hand still bright purple. She then gave a quick nod and walked towards her camp within the cave. The fire she kept was small but warm, and once she finished eating, she smothered it with some dry dirt. I leaned my head against the wood log and closed my eyes. Some time passed before I finally heard her shift. She had turned to lie on her back. I fixed my eyes on the Siam before me and waited. So, in this first entry, they're in a jungle. Whether this is a jungle on Earth or perhaps even Venus is unclear. We do know that the reader is definitely not Acacia. My guess, this is Michael. You know, the tome in his bag. This is very likely Michael.
I see.
She seems a bit cautious, perturbed, and despite the fact that clearly Michael was trying to play being just a wanderer, clearly he isn't there to just catch a good night's sleep. Acacia 2. I waited until I heard her troubled breathing and whimpers before I got up. As I approached, my eyes settled on her sleeping face. It was difficult to get a good look in the dark. Moonlight barely trickled into the cave. She writhed. It was a nightmare. One of his. It had to be. I reached out to her, and my fingers found the flesh of her arm. In an instant, I was trapped in a whirlwind. The overwhelming screams, the voices, the haunting imagery of his face, the very essence of fear. I couldn't rip myself from it. I was right. It was him. A purple blast from her hand hit me. I landed with a rough thud before I knew it. She was standing over me. Her breaths were loud, her body language read angry with the way the energy from her hands radiated up her arm. I gazed up wide-eyed. I'm sorry, I managed. Hands up again. I'm looking for him. For Nezarec. And you're the first being I've found that has come into contact with him outside of my family. She remained defensive. I simply want to see his power. To see what your experience was like with him. At this, her demeanor softened, but only slightly. We had come to an understanding. She backed up and sat on the log. I cautiously got to my feet and joined her. Please, I begged. After a long pause, she looked at me. I held her gaze until my vision was suddenly warped. So, very obviously Michael, we're talking here, and this would also imply that Acacia is the first non-human member of the Acolytes. Very interesting. Any comments there, Salem?
I do find it quite interesting that there is non-human members.
I mean, I'm not surprised that there isn't. Obviously the Scions have a very long sordid past. Now, a Guardian being one was certainly the most interesting case, but Fallen not too much
We
because they
expect
pretty
a
much...
Guardian to follow Nezarec, but then again, Guardians don't really owe the Traveler anything, so they can do whatever they please and serve whoever they want.
And we'll definitely see the horror story behind Briar's inoculation into the Acolytes, because it is certainly not a... certainly quite the horror story. Anyways, Acacia 3. The structure I find myself in resembles a simple, quaint home. It's small and filled with decorations donning symbols I do not recognize. At the center of the room, 2 Scions sleep peacefully among a stack of blankets and pillows. I watch the memory unfold from one of the corners. Acacia, the name echoes in my mind. Her name. From behind me, a sinister presence stirs. Goosebumps dart over my skin. A familiar whispers. One I have heard plenty of times in my life. Increase in volume. I turn to look at the home's entrance, and it is consumed in darkness, windows and all. I wait with bated breath. Ring of eyes materialize in the window. Nezarec. At the sound of his name, the shadow from the window expands and devours all light in the room. Acacia and the other Scion are the only figures I can see. Darkness oozes down towards them. I watch intently, unable to take my eyes off the spectacle. A hand forms, claws outstretched, his arm, then his face, the shape of his true horned headpiece. The ring of eyes, the cacophony of hisses and screams fill the void while the 2 remain fast asleep. Nezarec reaches for the Scion sleeping beside Acacia. The tips of his claws drag down across the skin, only to stop at his closed eye. The darkness swirls, then Nezarec vanishes, leaving nothing but moonlight. Very, very... Oh, I got goosebumps. That... Now,
Are you sure you're not a professional ghost story reader?
Ido has been telling me that I should probably start writing stories for the Festival of the Lost, but we'll see about that. I'll have to talk
I have a
with her
few
about
nieces
that.
and nephews that might get quite the scare from your stories.
Indeed. Also, funny note, I did chuckle a little bit. It appears that Scions like to sleep in just a stack of blankets and pillows. They don't really have, like, beds. I didn't
Not
know
my
that about...
preferable choice. I mean, we do offer them housing, but
Interesting how they just, like, what is it? Like, they just throw it on, like, a pile, and they're just like, all right, this is bed now.
I mean,
it's
I
certainly...
can't really judge them if that's how they like to sleep. That's how they like to sleep.
No, like, listen, it's certainly interesting. It's
just like you guys find it strange that we cry from our mouths.
Yeah, we cry from our eyes, which is interesting to you guys, so... I don't know, cultural differences,
I find it strange. How does the tears from your eyes help with digestion?
It doesn't.
Interesting.
It doesn't. Alright, Acacia 4. He was chosen. A phrase repeats throughout the rest of Acacia's memory. The words bounce off around the walls of my mind. It becomes hard to focus. Different voices flood in, mixing with hers. Different inflections, all different Scions. He had to be chosen. I watched a group of large, ornately dressed Scions enter Acacia's home in the dead of night. They exchange loud, discernible words and restrain her. Anguish sounds leave her as she watches them take her partner away. He is powerful. He will sate Nezarec for a long time. Be thankful he was chosen. The different phrases blend haphazardly. The memory slowly fades and the image bleeds into one another until I see a group of scions at the center of the chaos. Seated among them is Acacia's partner. I feel the weight of her pain on my chest, but darkness creeps in. Hundreds of claws rip and shred the edges of memory. Acacia's pained walls join Nezarec's symphony. Her partner jolts in different directions, as if his body is ripping apart. A purple hue envelops him. He rises from his seat, levitating off the ground, and dark tendrils attach themselves to his shadow to siphon his power. He lets out a pained shout, and suddenly my reality warps again, and I'm thrust back into the real world. The dizziness hits me like a crashing wave. I lean over the log and throw up. Nightmarish imagery. Imagine your partner surrounded by ornate cultists in a chair, and they're jolting all over the place like spasms, and they float in the air, and these dark tendrils pour out of the shadow and just suck the power, the life out of your...
Would it be very, very strange if I thought this was a weird human story? Because this sounds strange.
And yet
Very strange.
And yet this is not a story. This is an account from a real scion.
I guess I can't really picture what exactly they might have saw, but that does sound kind of frightening.
It's horrifying. Acacia 5, the final entry. The hatred Acacia felt for her people and Nezarec permeated every inch of the cave. I didn't know what to say. I knew what it meant to be touched by Nezarec. Though I would have preferred her partner, Acacia would have to suffice. I understand your pain, I said and reached out to touch her shoulder. She flinched and her eyes snapped to my face. I know you feel hatred towards him. But that's good. Acacia got to her feet. The purple glow covered her hands once more. He rewards those who survive his torment. You know his power. His nightmare needs to live on. I say gently and stood up to gaze at her. Acacia looks agitated, impatient. I reached for my bag, and she extends her hand defensively. We held each other's gaze for a moment. I slowly pulled out a tomb from my bag and placed it gently on the log. I flipped the pages until I found an image of a familiar two-horned being. My family has worshipped him for a long time, I told her. Acacia looked down at the pages. Keep that hatred alive. That's what he wants. I sensed her apprehension. If you help me bring him back into this plane, show him you're willing to serve him, he might just let your partner go, I added. It was difficult to tell what she was feeling, but after placing her hand on the tomb, I affixed to the cover's image. I knew that she would be desperate enough to try anything. So, Michael is not a good individual. None of the acolytes of Nezarec are. But it could be surmised.
I would assume not. I mean, they're worshipping this
the final god of
deity.
This terrifying nightmare entity. Yeah, it's obvious that they're not good people. Now, it appears Acacia's devotion is not out of admiration, but resentment and hatred. Which is certainly interesting because that is not shared by others. Obviously, Michael and his family worship the thing like a god and revere it. Now, so this story takes place during the Dark Age. This is not super modern times. Around the same time, another horrific tale occurs to another member of the Acolytes, or soon-to-be Acolytes. Briar. He's a Titan, and a good one at that. Briar 1. The weight of the forest darkness pressed down on me. Adrenaline pumped through me as I watched my opponent fall. I listened for the thud as their body collided with the ground. Deep crimson painted a nearby tree, sliding down through bark and seeping into sapwood, the excess pooling on the ground to soak into the dead pine needles. I don't remember who it was, why I had chosen to slay them. In the past, I've seen my fair share of bloodshed, killed indiscriminately. If you saw another day on my lands, it was because I willed it. But this felt different. Up ahead, shadows shifted in the sea of trees. I braced myself, sword held steady. Shivers traveled up my fingertips, electrified my arms, and settled as a chill on the back of my neck. Who's there? I could hear whispers all around me, from behind every tree. It was overwhelming, all-encompassing, indecipherable. The shadow swiftly closed the distance between us until it towered over me. It reached for me and I stepped back. I remembered the sinister laugh, the way it touched a primal fear deep within me. I was paralyzed. My mind flooded with whispers. Its wispy body lurched forward and slammed into me. I felt myself fall. The wind left my lungs, and for a moment, there was nothing. An emptiness like I had never felt before. Wow. These are some dark stories. People often people wonder why Nezarec gets this title. I can't even imagine being out in the woods after killing somebody. By the way, Briar, if you couldn't tell, he's a warlord. This is the Dark Age. He's killing people just for being on his land. But he's a guardian. He's a light bearer. Well, not a guardian. He's a warlord. But he's a light bearer.
Didn't the Iron Wolves did the same thing? Or the Iron Lords, or whatever their name was?
So, no. The only one who technically had land was Fellwinter. The rest of them, because he was a former warlord, the rest of them actually tried to free or take away the lands of warlords to give them back to survivors. Heroes.
I see.
But regardless, having this, being surrounded by a forest of shadows and having this wisp close the distance between you and just right up in your face, and he just reaches for you, and it's laughing, and it's scary. Oh my, it is, whoo, it is something else.
Definitely given any scary story I have ever heard will run for its money.
Oh, this is something else. Briar 2. The cycle remained the same, but my actions were not my own. My blade felt heavier with each battle. I did not recognize the shadow attached to me. I did not recognize myself. Did I even know who I was to begin with? The shouts and pleas of my enemies reverberated in the air. My skin burned, and my heart pounded harder than a hammer striking an anvil. My head was filled with a dense fog. I was present but lost. My adversary fell to the ground, gasping for air. I fixed my eyes on their face, and a breathy, animalistic snarl escaped my lips. It lingered in the air like a haunting song. Oh, beneath it was that laugh. His laugh. I fell to my knees, staining them in the crimson that had pooled beneath my boots. I dropped my sword and lifted my shaking hands up to my eyes. The fresh blood ran down my fingers, forming a tapestry in the palm lines. I saw his face in the pattern and felt the weight of his hands on my shoulders, on my mind. I screamed! Oh my... This is great! I haven't read.
Wow.
Just the horror.
What is that term you gave me? Goosebumps?
Goose chicken skin, goosebumps. It's just. Nezarec is scary. And
Jorio, I have a question for you.
go ahead, ask.
And honestly, this can go to any of our viewers. What is your biggest fear that Nezarec could use against you?
Well, I've faced that fear, and I'll go over it when we get to it. But to put it lightly, I have already faced my fear, and it was something that took very long to overcome. But we'll get to it. Trust me, and I will discuss it here in this log, but it's coming.
Huh. All right.
Briar 3. You are mine. My threaded silk sheets were no longer a comfort. Instead, they felt like gravel against my skin. Every twist and turn yielded pain. The lit candle beside my bed did not ease my mind. I turned onto my back, my eyes trained on the ceiling to avoid the shadows dancing in the candle's light's orange glow. As I sunk into my pillow, I felt as though it would eventually suffocate me. It could not grant me solace from the whispers. They were always present. White noise. At least until he required my attention. Bring me more. Groans of pain and agony poured into my room. Each corner shifted and warped in ways I could only attribute to that fateful day in the woods. I was paralyzed by the weight of it all. The flame at the tip of the wick flickered weakly as it neared the bottom of the holder with a wax pool. Numerous claws and black tendrils inched their way towards my bed. You will never be free. I cried out as solar energy burst forth. The hammer was warm in my grasp. I leapt from my bed, slammed the fiery weapon down into the floorboards. I felt the heat intensify as flames licked at every surface they could find. The shadows still danced, still reached for me. I tried to burn them away. Wood splintered and cracked as everything fell apart. My screams drowned in the destruction of my home. It's Nezarec. When I've noticed that when Nezarec gets a hold on you, he never lets go. He will be with you always. And that's the That's really the curse of Nezarec. The curse. I can only assume that this is similar to the curse that Mithrax would later be assaulted by.
Is he still affected by him?
Not anymore, thankfully, but we'll go over that.
You did just say once Nezarec gets a hold of you, he doesn't let go.
Well, thankfully, in order to cleanse it from Mithrax, it was due to the help of something called an echo. But once again, we'll get to that. Briar 4. By the way, I don't know if you knew that, but in Briar 2, he literally rips his own eyes out.
Oh.
Oh wait, no. He doesn't rip his eyes out. He just is horrified because he just can't. He can always see him. My bad. Okay.
What is it with most of you people ripping your eyes out, though?
Sight
or burning your eyes out?
Sight is certainly something that
Eris did it. Another Guardian did it. How many of you eat your eyes?
Well, Eris didn't do it on purpose. She was blinded by after getting lost in the Hellmouth and fighting the Hive. But regardless, Briar 4. I did not ask for your help, I shouted. Rage coursed through me. My knife was stained red. I shouldn't have been able to see it. Any of it. But here I was, staring back at my ghost. You need your sight, Firethorn returned. His voice was... Yeah, I'm sorry. He did rip out his eyes. His voice was laced with concern, something I had ignored in the moment, but would remember for years to come. That is not up to you. He preys upon my vision. I stepped forward and Firethorn floated up to meet my gaze. The blade in my hand shook as a faint whisper tickled in the back of my mind. Do it. I shouted. Covered my ears. I could see shapes forming in the darkness of the tree line again. Oh, I'm sorry. His sight is not gone yet, but I guess he's considering taking it. My bad. Sorry for ruining the immersion. Let me get back into it. I shouted, covering my ears. I could see shapes forming in the darkness of the tree line again. I couldn't take it anymore, but I knew Firethorn would only continue to heal me. You need to snap out of this, Firethorn pushed. You're losing control. Where is the great briar of the wild brambles? The thorn that pieced the heart of would-be gods? A puppet. Pain and terror were your symphony. My symphony. What's become of... I remember how easily my hand wrapped around him. How I forced him to the ground and pierced his lens with my knife. I hadn't realized what I had done till I saw the little light flicker out of his eye. Firethorn's pieces were the last thing I saw before succumbing to permanent darkness. Drove him so insane that he ripped out his own eyes and made him kill his own ghost. Briar is no longer a light bearer at this point, because he killed Firethorn, his ghost. Final entry. Briar 5. The campfire crackled and echoed through the cave. I reached towards it, allowing the warmth to guide me. The man across from me had remained silent through my recollection. You carry the scent of him, of Nezarec. As do you, Briar of the Wild Brambles, the man said. The title felt unfamiliar as it left his lips. Was I still deserving of that moniker? It felt long ago. It's faint, but still there. What is the true reason you've sought me out? There was a long pause. Then I heard him shuffle around for something in his bag. My family has been in Nezarec's favor for generations, he said. I defensively gripped my walking stick, ready to draw my blade if necessary. I heard the thud of a heavy object, and after a couple seconds, the sound of pages turning. He spoke again. Our experiences will not be the last. The pages continued to turn. It was loud enough for me to hear over the crackle of the fire. Do you wish to feel his full power again? The man asked. Deep down, I felt an instantaneous yes ring loud and true. I had spent so long fearing his influence, the sheer terror that he amplified within. But when he was gone, all that remained was a void, an all-consuming vacuum of terror. What do you need me to do? I asked. I had no way of definitely knowing, but something told me the man was smiling. Dun dun dun!
Oh my goodness.
So, as you can see from just these two stories,
Nezarec has quite the influence.
Nezarec is a being of terror, able to do terrible things to people, taking their loved ones in ritualistic sacrifice, tormenting you until you go so mad that you kill your own ghost and rip out your own eyes. He is a being of pure terror. And that terror extends to nightmares. Now, nightmares will get their own little log, but to briefly go over what a nightmare is, it's darkness energy manifested into beings of negativity attached to a target. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be fear, like some people say, but it's always negative. Whether that be anger, grief, loss, malice, hatred, fear, anything. Any negative energy could manifest itself as a nightmare. And the thing was that Nezarec was able to control nightmares. That was his speciality. He tapped into darkness that would rain terror on people due to just negative energy, negative emotion. Now, we now know that nightmares can be cleansed, or it can be just dissipate with time. I know that I was here when the nightmares of my former fire team members came around and wreaked havoc on me. But eventually I was able to come to terms with their deaths and have them dissipate. But regardless, it feeds, when you're dealing with a nightmare, it feeds on your negative emotion, but I guess the fear of feeling angry, the fear of feeling alone or miserable or sad or grief or loss or guilt. But it's that fear that drives it underneath. That's the purity of a nightmare. The purity.
How do you come to terms with your nightmares?
You face them. Confront them, try to figure out why they're there, what they're trying to embody. And from there, you can face them. It's not easy. Few have done it, but it is possible to face them and survive to tell the tale. Because most of the time, those who cannot deal with them properly tend to go crazy.
So, if my inner torment were to manifest into one of these nightmares, how do I even manage to face them?
Find out why it's there. What emotion is it preying off of? Your anger?
Do I
Guilt?
have to do it alone?
Of course not. Now, thankfully, these nightmares have not been too active since Nezarec's defeat. So, thankfully, I don't know if you'll ever have to face one in your lifetime.
That's a relief.
But due to the power of Nezarec, which once again we'll go over at the end, who knows? Anyways, the acolytes of Nezarec were able to study and worship and even try to procure some of the corpse parts of Nezarec. Funny enough, one of the members, Nessa, came into a weird interaction with our very own rat, the Drifter, who was able to not give her the piece of Nezarec's corpse to prevent it from falling into the hands of somebody like that. Anyways, Nezarec's body was, put in these little talismans scattered across the soul system. Nightmares infected due to the power and latent power of Nezarec found aboard his pyramid ship. Nightmares infested the moon, which were faced by Eris and the young wolf and their compatriots. And then a lot of time passed. Nezarec didn't really have any major plot developments, I guess, or nothing involving Nezarec was really pushed to the forefront until after Savathun's death. Obviously, you know of the Leviathan showing up back aboard, showing up on Luna and feasting on the nightmares.
Oh, I remember.
Because Callus, at the time, was trying to make a psychic connection between himself and the pyramid ship. Thankfully, we were able to stop that in its tracks, even if we were not able to kill Callus himself. But it stopped it, and this, in turn, strangely enough, would segue into the next part. The witness revived Aramis, who gathered the rest of the House of Salvation and the old pirate crews that were still around, and had made a beeline for whatever talismans were scattered across the system. It was a game of treasure hunt between Aramis and the houses and the House of Salvation and the old pirate crews, and the young wolf, their compatriots, Drifter, Ido, Mithrax, and obviously some negative things were some drama between the fallen occurred, but at the forefront. But in the background, all the corpse parts were being assembled. But for why? Well, it turns out that Mithrax knew a little something. You could say a concoction, a spell, what have you. But he was able to distill the darkness energy from these corpse parts into a liquid. And this liquid was able to revive Osiris from a coma, as it were.
The coma Savathun brought upon him.
After possessing him, correct.
Yes.
Now, here's the problem. In order to do this, he had a lot of exposure to those corpse parts. And having a lot of them assembled meant that he kind of got hit with, well, a good way to look at it is getting hit with radiation, or in this case, darkness radiation, which unfortunately manifested itself as the curse of Nezarec, which afflicted Mithrax from that point on, for quite some time.
Definitely worried his daughter a lot.
Certainly. He was seeing, whereas most of the nightmares at that point had all been dissipated, he kept seeing them all over. Nightmares of his past, and the evils of Nezarec that were shown in both Briar and Acacia. Terrors beyond... excuse me. Terrors beyond comprehension. Now, this was not the end of the story of Nezarec. In fact, it would only grow worse. Turns out that when the Guardians finally stepped to... when the Guardians finally learned of the location of the Veil and the Amuna, by then it was just a wee bit too late. The Witness had finally arrived in our orbit and attacked the Traveler. The Traveler, in an attempt to fight the Witness's own pyramid, struck it with this light-infusing beam. Now, aboard this ship, in a crystalline sarcophagus, would be one head of Nezarec, kept aboard the Witness's ship for whatever reason. And because the Traveler shot paracausal light, which manifested as a paracausal flora, aka a tree of silver wings, it infected the sarcophagus and in turn revived Nezarec. The process was slow, mind you, but it would certainly cause issues. For starters, the immediate after effect was that Nezarec started to torment and cause terror amongst the Shadow Legion aboard the Pyramid ship, including the Explicator of Planets, Zoark. Now, around this time and during the assault on Neomuna, it was discovered that the citizens, currently in the Cloud Ark, were all experiencing nightmares. These nightmares were brought upon by Nezarec, who was able to tap into the Veil, as he had done before, and since the Cloud Ark was connected to the Veil and relied on the Veil, it was pretty much creating a key-sized hole that the key-shaped Nezarec could slide right into and start causing mass terror. The Guardian would soon discover that this being that was causing these nightmares was named Nezarec, and that Nezarec was already making his influence known. Not only was he causing nightmares and terrible things inside Neomuna, but his imprints started showing up at the later half of the battle for the siege of Neomuna. He started, apparently some Guardians recall hearing whispers, specifically, during their time on Neomuna. After time, the young wolf and their compatriots were assembled to shut Nezarec down. So, with a team of 6, including the young wolf and obviously their compatriots, they stormed the Witness's pyramid ship, fought their way through various Shadow Legion forces and tormentors, destroyed the Explicator, and eventually made their way all the way to the crystalline sarcophagus. Nezarec, having been reborn with both light and dark, popped out. You heard me right. This Nezarec was not normal Nezarec, not even by any stretch of the means. He was infused with light. If you want to be technical about it, Nezarec was the first being to use powers similar to transcendence, or prismatic, because he was both imbued with light and dark. Now, despite the fact that this being had brand new powers that made it even more terrifying, thankfully the Guardians were able to slaughter Nezarec in his track. But here's the problem.
Nezarec as a whole is a problem. What
Nezarec
else
is a
could be?
problem as a whole. Here's the issue. This, even his corporeal death at the hands of the paracausal Guardians was not enough. He was dead, but the curse of Nezarec still clung to Mithrax like a disease. And during the Revenant Uprising, where Fikrul was able to gain one of the, after the Witness's defeat, and gaining one of the Echoes, the curse got worse and worse and worse. It was clear that Ida was treating something that was failing to an extent. But Mithrax was starting to change. Bitterness, rage, despair, power hungry. And after Fikrul was defeated, Aramis and Mithrax would have to, well, they tried to fight, or see who would claim the Echo of Reese first. Now, Mithrax, now under Nezarec's influence, would likely caused major damage if he had gotten possession of the Echo of Reese. Thankfully for us all, Aramis got it first. And the first act of Aramis with the Echo was to cleanse and exorcise Nezarec and the curse from Mithrax, which did work. Yippee! So,
Yay!
now with Nezarec dead and his curse gone, you'd think happy ending, right? Wrong. This is the true terror of Nezarec. Nezarec can never die. He will always be here. He will never be defeated. In his own words, as long as there is fear and terror in the world, he will never be gone. It is inevitable that Guardians, whether it be years, decades, centuries from now, will likely have to fight him again. Because he's just gonna keep coming back. Because fear can never be eliminated. People living life itself will always fear. Fear is tied in with life just as much as sustenance and thought. Even sentient beings.
If you don't fear, you can never truly live.
Correct. Well, and here's the thing. Even unsentient life fears. Plants fear. Animals fear. Every tree, every war beast, every child who's scared of something underneath the covers.
I'd like to have this saying. If a rabbit doesn't fear, the hungry wolf, then it's not alive.
The issue is that is the issue. As long as people gaze into the shadows, whether it be a dark forest, the outside, under your bed, in your closet, anywhere where you may feel fear, Nezarec will live on. That is the terror, the true horror of Nezarec. The fact that no matter what we do as Guardians, despite the fact that we are paracausal and able to break fate, we cannot break fear. For life fears. That is just a fundamental aspect of life itself. And Nezarec, a being who thrives and will always live on through fear, will never be gone. So once again, whether it be years, decades, centuries, or even eons from now, Nezarec will live on. All we have done is stop the problem temporarily. And unfortunately, despite all of our best research, I don't think there will ever be a way to rid the universe of Nezarec. He has become
How
a
hard we
constant.
try.
He has become a constant. It's not a matter of if he comes back. It is a matter of when. Now, it is... I'm trying to think of like other notes that we could discuss before we end this log. His scythe is unique. It is a unique weapon to him and the other tormentors. A lot of people like to say that that is his glaive, which has altered its design into a scythe. That is not true. So this being has been all over the universe. He's affected there's logs of him going back all over the place. Species that were destroyed by the Hive during their campaigns, species that the Witness itself wiped out, like the Noasis. They referred to him as the predatory memeplex, which is certainly a term for it. He is mimetic in a sense. Which, I know, I have all the Guardians are hearing, what did you say about memes? Well, memes are mimetic. Subliminal messaging. Memes, they're subliminal messages figured in, like, artistic format, like jokes. They are used as subliminal messaging, in a sense.
So if I put your face on a poster, are you a meme?
You can be, if you've done it in a way that makes it convey a secret message.
Interesting.
Oh, I will note this. There is one note. So, back in the day, back when said Guardians were first hearing the whispers of Nezarec on Neomuna, it was interesting because they could only hear the whispers if they were wearing the Nezarec Sin Warlock Exotic Helmet or carrying the Nezarec's Whisper Glaive. If they were wielding one of these two, they could hear the whispers. But very interesting. It is noted by the Vanguard that Nezarec probably didn't always look like Nezarec, but his final form, without obviously the light and darkness powers, Rolk used a blueprint from himself to transform Nezarec from whatever form he was in into his disciple form, which does explain why they look similar. Now, it is a blueprint. Not that he is not a brand copy. He is not a clone. He is not a copy. Just a blueprint. He's a very scary individual. I would be curious to see how the acolytes move on, because they're obviously, the acolytes are not dead. They're still out there in the universe. But yeah. Anyways, that will have to do it for this episode. I don't think there's anything else. Do you have any final notes you want to say on Nezarec, Salem?
No, I don't really have that much to say about Nezarec. He is a terrifying being.
He is certainly Destiny's Freddy Krueger. But yeah, that is going to be it from us at the Destiny Lore Emissary Logs podcast. We appreciate everybody who tunes into the podcast and listens. Seriously, it means a lot to us.
It does. It truly does.
Yes. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can. If you're listening on YouTube, you can also listen to us on Spotify. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can also listen to us on YouTube. You'll get some cool gameplay behind it, but whatever. If you want to follow me, Jorio11, you can follow my TikTok page, Jorio11 Lorekeeper, or you can follow me and whenever I go live and play games and do stuff at Jorio Gaming 00 on Kick, Twitter, Discord, and TikTok. Addie, you wanna?
You can find me on my TikTok at addy.h.art. You can find the link to the podcast there if any of you kind of just lost yourself on where to find this on YouTube. And basically, I keep all of my links in my bio. And if you have any questions for me, you can always DM me personally on my TikTok. Do not be a stranger. I don't bite. Yeah, that's really it for me.
As for the upcoming episodes, we still have the next episode we're going to be doing is Loom and Doom. Very much going over the Baron Imperium. Then we're going to go over some
so much shit about Loom.
Then after that, we got Vex related stuff, more Vex content. Then we got the science of subclasses, which is, some of them are pretty misunderstood. And then after that, got the Ironwood Tree, which is the Iron Lords. So yeah, that'll be that. And then after that, we got the beginning of the trilogy, we're gonna call it. But we'll save the trilogy and what it's about for down the road. Anyways, once again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching.
Truly.
You wanna do your thing?
Of course. Thank you. We are Cabal. We eat the mountains, and we drink the seas, and we will conquer the stars. And I'll see you all on the battlefield. Good night.
See you, Starside Guardians. Cue the outro.
Cue the outro.
Whoa!